No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
One famous show replaced a father and pretended nobody noticed. Another series swapped a daughter and made jokes about it for years. But the most shocking one involves a show that fired its main star and tried to keep going. These are not just small changes. These are the moments that destroyed popular TV shows. What many overlooked is the chaos that happened behind the cameras to make these switch-ups happen. 1. Darren Stevens on Bewitched.
I'm a man, and you're a man, and she's a woman.
No, she isn't.
She isn't a woman?
No.
I see. Congratulations, sir. That's an amazing disguise.
This is the big one. The one that started the phrase, the two Darrens. On the classic show Bewitched, the entire story revolved around the relationship between Samantha the Witch and her mortal husband named Darren Stevens. Darren was the stressed-out and flustered advertising executive who just wanted a normal life. He loved his wife, but he hated it when she used magic. His constant frustration with his magical mother-in-law named Endora was a source of endless laughs. For the first 5 seasons of the show, Darren was played by an actor named Dick York. He was amazing. He was the perfect physical comedian with a talent for bug-eyed expressions of panic and frustration. But behind the scenes, Dick York was in constant and terrible pain. Years before Bewitched, he had suffered a severe back injury while filming a movie. He never fully recovered. To get through filming, he had to take a lot of pain medication. The long hours on set made his condition worse and worse. It got so bad that one day, during the filming of an episode in Season 5, he had a seizure on set and had to be rushed to the hospital. When he was lying in his hospital bed, he knew he could not continue. He quit the show right then and there. The show was a massive hit, so they could not just end it. They had a tough choice to make. They decided to do the unthinkable and recast the main male character. Starting in Season 6, a new actor named Dick Sargent stepped into the role of Darren. He looked a bit different and had a much calmer and more low-key acting style. The show never once mentioned the change. One week, it was Dick York, and the next, it was Dick Sargent, and the story just continued as if nothing had happened. It was a bold move that has become a legend in TV history. But while fans accepted the change, the spark was gone. Replacing a husband is one thing, but what about a show that replaced a daughter, then brought the original back, and then swapped them again? This next situation was so confusing, it became a running joke. 2. Becky Connor on Roseanne.
Why, if it isn't Becky Connor, long-lost daughter of Dan and Roseanne Connor. So kind of you to join us.
No list of character replacements would be complete without talking about Becky Connor from Roseanne. The show was praised for its realistic portrayal of a blue-collar American family. Roseanne and Dan Connor were raising their 3 kids named DJ, Darlene, and the oldest daughter named Becky. In the first 5 seasons, Becky was played by an actress named Lisi Goranson. She was the perfect original Becky. She was a smart and sometimes rebellious teenager who was just trying to grow up. Then Becky did something that changed everything. She eloped with her boyfriend named Mark. Around that same time in real life, Lisi Goranson decided she wanted to go to college. She left the show to attend Vassar. At first, the show just wrote her character out, saying she had moved away with Mark. But she was a popular character, so they wanted to bring her back. For Season 6, they recast the role with a new actress named Sarah Chalke. Sarah had a different and more bubbly energy, and she played Becky for the next couple of seasons. But here is where it gets really weird and funny. Lisi Goranson decided she wanted to come back to the show. The producers liked both actresses, so they decided to do something no show had ever done before. They had both actresses share the role. For Season 8, Lisey would play Becky in some episodes, and Sarah would play her in others, depending on Lisey's school schedule. They never explained the change to the audience. One week, Becky would just look completely different. They even made jokes about it in the show. In one episode, a character says to Becky that he cannot believe she is the same person. It was a bizarre situation that became one of the show's most lasting legacies. Having two actors play the same sister is wild. But our next show also featured a massive swap, but this time it was the mother figure, and the tension behind the scenes was legendary. 3. Vivian Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I don't care. Carlton, you are not going to MacArthur Park tonight. In fact, none of you are going to MacArthur Park tonight.
Wait a minute.
Boy, do not test me.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, this is a story all about how a beloved TV mom got flipped and turned upside down. On The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith's character moved from West Philadelphia to live with his rich aunt and uncle in their Bel-Air mansion. His Aunt Vivian, or Aunt Viv, was a central character. She was a strong, smart, and elegant college professor who was also a loving but firm mother figure to Will and her own 3 children. For the first 3 seasons, Aunt Viv was played by the incredible Janet Hubert. She was amazing in the role, bringing a fiery passion and a regal presence. She was also a talented dancer, which was showcased in an iconic episode where she performs a flawless dance routine. But as the show became a worldwide phenomenon, rumors started to swirl about tension on the set. Specifically, reports said that Janet Hubert and the show's star, Will Smith, were not getting along. Their personalities clashed, and the work environment became very difficult. By the end of the 3rd season, the situation had reached a breaking point. When the show returned for its 4th season, Janet Hubert was gone. The role of Aunt Viv was now being played by actress Daphne Maxwell Reid. This was not a subtle change. Daphne Maxwell Reid had a much softer, calmer, and more motherly presence. Her version of Aunt Viv felt like a very different character. The show, in its typical humorous style, even made a joke about it. In the first episode with the new actress, the character Jazz looks at her and says that, since she had that baby, there is something different about her. For years, there was a lot of public back and forth between Will Smith and Janet Hubert. Replacing a mother changes the warmth of a show. But what happens when you replace the chaotic older sister who caused all the drama? The next show tried this, and the result was just plain awkward. 4. Lori Foreman on That 70s Show.
She's got a big TV show, and she's married to Lee Majors, so Aquanet, very important.
Let us head down to the basement in Point Place, Wisconsin for That 70s Show. The show was a hilarious look back at teenage life in the 1970s, centered around Eric Foreman and his group of friends. Eric also had an older sister named Lori, who was a constant pain in his neck. Lori was promiscuous and manipulative, and she loved to tease her little brother. She was the perfect annoying older sister character, and she was played for the first 5 seasons by actress Lisa Robin Kelly. Lisa was fantastic in the role, making Lori a character that fans love to hate. But behind the scenes, Lisa Robin Kelly was struggling with personal issues. She had health problems that were making it difficult for her to continue working on the show. For her own well-being, she had to leave the series at the beginning of the 3rd season. Her character was written out, with the explanation that she had gone off to beauty school. She made a few guest appearances later, but her personal struggles continued. For the show's 6th season, the writers wanted to bring the character of Lori back full-time. Since Lisa Robin Kelly was unable to return, they had to recast the role. They hired actress Christina Moore to take over. Christina was a talented actress, but it was a tough spot to be in. Fans were so used to Lisa's unique and quirky portrayal of Lori that it was hard for them to accept someone new. The new Lori did not have the same chaotic energy, and the character never quite clicked with audiences in the same way. After a short run in season 6, the character was once again written out of the show, this time for good. While Lori was a supporting character, Our next entry involves replacing one of the main daughters in a very tight-knit family sitcom, and fans notice the difference immediately. 5. Mandy Baxter on Last Man Standing.
If you don't change this, they're not going to let you speak.
I'm not changing it.
You know what? I'm going to say something right now. I really don't want to, but I'm so frustrated. I just feel like I have to. Please.
Jumping forward a few decades, let us talk about the hit sitcom Last Man Standing. The show stars Tim Allen as Mike Baxter, a man's man who is the marketing director for an outdoor sporting goods store. He lives in a house full of women, including his wife and their 3 daughters. A big part of the show's comedy comes from his conservative views clashing with his family's more modern ideas. The middle daughter was named Mandy. For the first 6 seasons, Mandy was played by actress Molly Ephraim. Molly Ephraim played Mandy as a fashion-obsessed and slightly ditzy girl who was actually quite smart when she wanted to be. She had incredible comedic timing and a very specific physical acting style. She was a fan favorite because of her funny reactions and her growth from a teenager into a business owner. But when the show was canceled by one network and then picked up by another a year later, Molly Ephraim had already taken other jobs and could not return. When the show came back for season 7, fans were shocked to see a new actress named Molly McCook in the role. The physical difference was huge. The original Mandy was short with dark hair, while the new Mandy was very tall with blonde hair. It was jarring for fans who had watched the character for 6 years. The show tried to make jokes about how she looked different, but for many viewers, it just felt like a completely different character with the same name. The chemistry she had with the rest of the family had to be rebuilt from scratch. Speaking of rebuilding chemistry, the next show on our list replaced the glue that held the entire family together, leading to a quick decline in quality. 6. Harriet Winslow on Family Matters.
No, I've been practicing. Watch this. Did I do that?
Did I do that? Everyone remembers Family Matters for the breakout character Steve Urkel, but the heart of the show was the Winslow family. The mother of the family was Harriet Winslow, played by actress Jo Marie Payton. She was the strong and sensible voice of reason who kept her husband Carl and their neighbor Steve Urkel in check. She had a very distinct no-nonsense attitude that grounded the show even when the plot lines got crazy and cartoony. Jo Marie Payton played Harriet for 8.5 seasons. She was a staple of 90s television. However, as the show went on, the focus shifted more and more toward Steve Urkel and his wacky inventions. Reports say that Jo Marie Payton was not happy with the direction the show was taking and felt her character was being sidelined. She decided to leave the show in the middle of the 9th and final season. This left the producers in a bind. They decided to recast the role for the remaining episodes. They brought in actress Judy Ann Elder to play Harriet. It was a strange move to make so close to the end of the series. Fans who had tuned in for nearly a decade suddenly saw a stranger in the role of the mother. The chemistry between Harriet and Carl, which had been built over many years, just vanished. It made the final episodes feel odd and disconnected, and the show ended shortly after, with a whimper rather than a bang. Losing a mom is hard, but losing the main character and narrator of the show is usually a death sentence. The next show tried to keep going after their lead doctor checked out. 7. J.D. on Scrubs.
Ow! He's the one that needs to cry, you idiot, not me! Ow!
Scrubs was a unique medical comedy that was famous for its mix of slapstick humor and deep emotional moments. The show was narrated by and centered around Dr. John Dorian, known as J.D., played by Zach Braff. His daydreams, his romance with Elliot, and his bromance with Turk were the driving forces of the entire series. We watched him grow from a scared intern to a capable doctor over 8 seasons. Season 8 was written as a perfect finale, with J.D. leaving the hospital to start a new job and be closer to his son. It was a beautiful and tearful goodbye, but the network wanted more. They decided to bring the show back for a 9th season. However, Zach Braff only agreed to appear in a handful of episodes to help transition the story. The focus of the show shifted to a new group of medical students, specifically a character named Lucy Bennett, played by Carrie Bichet. The setting also changed from the hospital to a medical school classroom. Fans rejected this new version of the show almost instantly. Without J.D. as the anchor, the tone felt wrong. The new characters were not as lovable as the original crew. It felt like a spin-off that was trying too hard to be the main show. The ratings dropped significantly, and the show was canceled after just that one awkward season. Most fans nowadays pretend that Season 9 does not even exist, and consider the Season 8 finale the true ending. If you think replacing a funny doctor is tough, try replacing one half of the most iconic detective duo in sci-fi history. 8. Fox Mulder on The X-Files.
Why is this so hard to believe? If you cannot get past this, then I suggest that this whole committee be held in contempt for ignoring evidence that cannot be refuted.
The truth is out there, and the truth was that The X-Files needed both Mulder and Scully. The show was a massive cultural phenomenon in the 90s. It followed FBI agents Fox Mulder, played by David Duchovny, and Dana Scully, played by Gillian Anderson. Mulder was the believer in aliens and the supernatural, while Scully was the skeptic scientist. Their chemistry was electric and was the main reason people watched the show. After Season 7, David Duchovny had a dispute with the network over his contract. He decided to leave the show as a full-time regular. To fill the void, the show brought in a new agent named John Doggett, played by Robert Patrick. Doggett was a tough, no-nonsense cop who did not believe in aliens at all. This forced Scully to become the believer, which completely flipped the dynamic of the show. Robert Patrick is a great actor, but he was not Mulder. The magic of the Mulder and Scully relationship was gone. Fans missed the banter and the specific tension between the original 2 leads. The ratings took a huge hit, dropping from a top-rated show to one that was barely hanging on. While the show limped along for 2 more seasons, it was never the same without David Duchovny leading the charge into the spooky darkness. Sci-fi fans are loyal, but preschoolers are even tougher critics. The next switch on our list traumatized a generation of toddlers. 9. Steve on Blue's Clues.
Hey, you're here. Blue and I were just getting ready for the really big art show. Just love looking at these. Blue is quite the artist.
If you were a kid in the late 90s or early 2000s, Steve Burns was your best friend. He was the host of the incredibly popular children's show, Blue's Clues. Dressed in his signature green striped shirt, Steve would talk directly to the camera, asking the kids at home for help solving puzzles with his animated dog, Blue. He had a gentle and curious nature that children absolutely adored. Then, in 2002, Steve decided it was time to leave. In the show, they explained that Steve was going off to college. In a special episode, he introduced his brother Joe, played by Donovan Patton. Joe wore a different colored shirt and had a slightly different personality. Steve gave a heartfelt goodbye to the audience, hopped on a bus, and left. For many young viewers, this was their first experience with loss. They did not want Joe. They wanted Steve. Parents reported that their kids were crying and refusing to watch the show with the new guy. Although Donovan Patton did a great job and hosted the show for several more years, the viewership numbers dropped significantly after Steve left. It turns out that the connection Steve had with the audience was one of a kind and could not simply be replicated with a different actor. From a kids show host to a wholesome mountain boy, the next replacement tried to fool an older audience, but they were just as sharp as the toddlers. 10. John Boy on the Waltons.
What do you believe in, Lyle? Primitive people manufacture gods and religions to account for unexplained natural phenomena.
Good Night, John Boy. The Waltons was a heartwarming drama about a large family living in the Virginia mountains during the Great Depression. The story was told through the eyes of the eldest son, John Boy Walton, played by Richard Thomas. John Boy was a sensitive writer who observed the world around him. Richard Thomas won an Emmy for the role and was the face of the show. After 5 seasons, Richard Thomas decided to leave the series to pursue other acting opportunities. The show wrote his character out by sending him to New York to become an author and later a war correspondent. For a while, the show focused on the other family members, but the producers felt a void without the character of John Boy. In Season 8, they brought John Boy back, but he was now played by a different actor named Robert Whiteman. The show tried to explain his slightly different appearance by saying he had been injured in the war, but fans were not buying it. Robert Whiteman was a fine actor, but he lacked the specific warmth and charm that Richard Thomas had brought to the role. The audience felt like an imposter was sitting at the family dinner table. The ratings continued to slide, and the show ended a couple of seasons later. Classic dramas rely heavily on their leads, but high-energy sitcoms rely on the star's charisma. Our next show collapsed when the charming main man had to leave. 11. Mike Flaherty on Spin City.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll...
Spin City was a fast-paced sitcom set in the chaotic world of New York City politics. The show starred the legendary Michael J. Fox as Mike Flaherty, the deputy mayor who had to constantly clean up the messes made by the bumbling mayor. Michael J. Fox was brilliant in the role, using his quick wit and charm to make the show a hit. However, during the run of the show, Michael J. Fox revealed that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. As his symptoms became harder to manage, he made the difficult decision to leave the show after Season 4 to focus on his health and advocacy work. It was a sad moment for television. To keep show going, the producers brought in Charlie Sheen to play a new deputy mayor named Charlie Crawford. While Charlie Sheen was a big star, he had a completely different energy than Michael J. Fox. The show changed from a smart political satire into a more standard sitcom. The chemistry of the ensemble cast was thrown off balance. Viewers drifted away, and the show was canceled just 2 seasons later. Charlie Sheen seems to be a common thread in these stories because in the next show, he was the one being replaced, and it caused a media firestorm. 12. Charlie Harper on 2.5 Men.
Do you know anything about geometry?
Well, I know it's what you say when you turn into a tree. Get it? I'm a tree.
2.5 Men was a ratings juggernaut. It starred Charlie Sheen as Charlie Harper, a wealthy womanizing jingle writer who lived in a Malibu beach house with his uptight brother Alan and his nephew Jake. The show was built entirely around Charlie Sheen's bad boy persona. It was crude, it was simple, and people loved it. But in 2011, production came to a crashing halt. Charlie Sheen was involved in a very public and chaotic feud with the show's creator. He was making wild statements in interviews and exhibiting unpredictable behavior. The studio eventually fired him, eliminating off his character in a very definitive way involving a subway train. To save the show, they hired Ashton Kutcher to play a new character named Walden Schmidt, a lovelorn internet billionaire who buys Charlie's house. Ashton Kutcher is a likable guy, but the tone of the show shifted dramatically. It went from a cynical comedy about a bachelor to a softer show about a naive, rich guy. While the curiosity kept ratings high for a little while, the core fan base was divided. The show limped on for 4 more seasons, but it never regained the cultural dominance it had when Charlie Sheen was the lead. Replacing a chaotic lead is risky, but replacing the world's best boss is even harder. The next show on our list lost its comedic center and never found it again. 13. Michael Scott on The Office.
Hey!
Hey!
The Office is one of the most beloved comedies of all time. At the center of the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company was the regional manager, Michael Scott, played by Steve Carell. Michael was cringe-inducing, needy, and often incompetent, but he also had a heart of gold. Steve Carell's performance was a masterclass in comedy. He could make you laugh and cry in the same scene. In Season 7, Steve Carell decided not to renew his contract. He wanted to spend more time with his family and pursue film roles. The show gave Michael Scott a perfect send-off, where he moves to Colorado to be with the love of his life, Holly. It was a satisfying end to his story. But the show continued for 2 more seasons. The writers struggled to find a replacement for the boss. They tried a few different characters, eventually settling on Andy Bernard, played by Ed Helms, and introducing a strange new CEO named Robert California, played by James Spader. Robert California was intense and weird, but he was not funny in the same way. Michael was. The heart of the show was missing. The characters felt like they were drifting without Michael's chaos to react to. The final seasons are widely considered to be a major step down in quality. Sometimes a replacement is tragic rather than a contract dispute. The next show faced the worst possible scenario when their beloved TV dad passed away in real life. 14. Paul Hennessy on 8 Simple Rules.
Good morning, Care Bear.
Yeah? Prove it.
Someone's not getting any Mickey Mouse pancakes today.
8. Simple Rules for Dating. My Teenage Daughter was a sitcom that marked the return of TV legend John Ritter. He played Paul Hennessy, a strict but loving father dealing with his 2 teenage daughters and 1 son. John Ritter was a comedy genius, and his physical humor and warmth were the main reasons the show was a hit. Tragically, at the start of the 2nd season, John Ritter fell ill on set and passed away suddenly from a heart defect. The cast and crew were devastated. The show decided to address the death in the series, airing some incredibly emotional episodes where the family mourns the loss of the father. To keep the show on air, they brought in 2 new male characters, the grandfather, played by James Garner, and a cousin, played by David Spade. While both actors tried their best, the dynamic of the show was permanently broken. You cannot replace a father figure like John Ritter. The show shifted from a parenting comedy to an ensemble show, but the laughter was always tinged with sadness. The ratings dropped and the show was canceled after the 3rd season. Tragedy is unavoidable, but sometimes egos get in the way. Our next show fell apart because the cast simply could not get along. 15. Suzanne Sugarbaker on Designing Women.
Diamond tiaras, grown men wet.
That's really
And you probably didn't know, Marjorie, that Suzanne was not just any Miss Georgia. She was the Miss Georgia.
Designing Women was a hit show about 4 women running an interior design firm in Atlanta. The breakout star was Delta Burke, who played the self-centered beauty queen Suzanne Sugarbaker. Her chemistry with the other women, especially her on-screen sister Julia, was electric. The banter was fast and sharp. However, behind the scenes, things were ugly. Delta Burke was in a public battle with the show's producers regarding her weight and her treatment on set. The tension became unbearable, and after season 5, she was fired from the show. Another main cast member, Jean Smart, also decided to leave at the same time. The show brought in 2 new actresses, Julia Duffy and Jan Hooks, to replace them. The new characters were quirky, but they did not fit the established rhythm of the group. The magical balance of the original four was gone. The ratings plummeted immediately. The show tried to course correct by firing Julia Duffy and bringing in yet another actress, Judith Ivey, but the damage was done. The show that had been a top 10 hit was canceled just 2 seasons after the original cast broke up. Speaking of breaking up a trio, the next show was famous for its roommates, but the revolving door of actresses eliminated the vibe. 16. Chrissy Snow on Three's Company.
Hey, Chrissy. You want to hear about my dream? Yeah. Good. I'll call you back when I've had it.
Three's Company was a massive hit in the late 70s. Premise was simple. A man named Jack Tripper pretends to be gay so he can share an apartment with 2 women, Janet and Chrissy. A huge part of the show's success was Suzanne Summers, who played Chrissy Snow. She played the dumb blonde stereotype with such charm and sweetness that she became a superstar. Suzanne Summers knew she was popular, so she asked for a massive pay raise to match the salary of the male lead, John Ritter. The producers refused. As a result, Suzanne Summers began to miss tapings. Eventually, she was fired. The show scrambled to replace her. First, they brought in a character named Cindy, played by Jenna Lee Harrison, who was Chrissy's clumsy cousin. She did not quite click with the audience. Then they brought in a character named Terry, played by Priscilla Barnes, who was a smart nurse. While the show continued for a few more years, the ratings never reached the same heights. The specific chemistry between Jack, Janet, and Chrissy was the secret sauce, and once that bottle was broken, they could not put it back together. Roommate dynamics are fragile. But what about the relationship between a doctor and a whole town? The next show lost its fish out of water and drowned. 17. Joel Fleischman on Northern Exposure.
Actually, I feel very lucky to be here. Very, very, very lucky.
Northern Exposure was a quirky and critically acclaimed show about a neurotic New York doctor named Joel Fleischman who is forced to work in a tiny, eccentric town in Alaska. The comedy came from the clash between the uptight doctor and the weird locals. Rob Morrow played Joel perfectly. However, Rob Morrow entered into a contract dispute with the producers. He wanted more money and threatened to leave. Midway through the 6th season, he got his wish and left the show. His character was written out as having gone to live in the wild. To replace him, the show introduced a new doctor named Phil Capra, played by Paul Provenza. But the entire premise of the show relied on Joel's specific relationships with the townspeople, especially his romance with the bush pilot Maggie. The new doctor had no history with these characters. The audience checked out almost immediately. The show, which had been a darling of the critics, was canceled swiftly after the swap. Sometimes the fans are so angry about a change that the show has to undo it. That is exactly what happened with the matriarch of the famous Ewing family. 18. Miss Ellie La on Dallas.
And I don't apologize for what my son did. It's a family matter. We may be wrong and we may be right, but we're Ewings. We stick together. And that's what makes us unbeatable.
Dallas was the biggest drama on TV in the 80s. It was full of backstabbing, oil money, and family feuds. The matriarch of the family was Miss Ellie Ewing, played by Barbara Bel Geddes. She was the glue that held the fighting family together. After season 7, Barbara Bel Geddes had experienced heart problems and had to undergo surgery. She decided to step away from the role to recover. The producers, not wanting to write out such a key character, hired a famous actress named Donna Reed to take over the role of Miss Ellie. Donna Reed was a Hollywood legend, but she was totally wrong for the part. Barbara Bel Geddes played Miss Ellie as a tough, down-to-earth ranch woman. Donna Reed played her as a glamorous society lady. Fans hated it. They wrote angry letters and complained loudly. The backlash was so bad that the producers actually fired Donna Reed and convinced Barbara Bel Geddes to return the following season. It is one of the rare times fan outrage actually forced a show to reverse a casting change.